What would you do if your parents threw a party on a Hawaiian beach instead of coming to your college graduation? I still remember standing on that stage, desperately searching for a familiar face in the crowd, only to find that every seat reserved for my family was empty. When I got home, the first thing that hit me was a flood of glamorous photos, my family glowing by the waves, laughing with my sister Olivia while the most important moment of my life was reduced to a forgotten name. Maybe nobody in my family ever thought I'd have the courage to do something unthinkable, but I changed my name and cut off all contact with them. Where are you watching this video from? Let me know if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on this journey of healing. My name is Emily Harper, and if you've ever been the kind of child who had to figure out how to stand tall in a family that barely ever looked your way, maybe you'll understand me better than anyone. I grew up in the northern suburbs of Seattle, where the streets are dusted with golden maple leaves in the fall and the winters drag on forever without enough light. There were 4 people in my family. My dad, my mom, was just a shared space, not a place where I belonged. From a very young age, I learned how to fend for myself. I can still remember being 5 years old, sitting at the dinner table, trying to tell my mom about my first day of kindergarten, and she'd only half listen before turning to Olivia to ask if she enjoyed her dance class. Things like that happened again and again throughout my childhood, as if I was always in the back seat of my own family life. Olivia is 3 years younger than me, the golden girl of the Harper family, or at least that's what the neighbors and every relative would say. She has shiny blonde hair, a dazzling smile, and could light up any room with just a few cheerful words. As for me, I looked ordinary. I was a good student, but not outstanding in any sport or art. But if there was one thing I excelled at, it was effort. I always tried harder than anyone else in the family, but that effort was never really acknowledged. Olivia got signed up for ballet, piano, French lessons, swimming, and trips with friends. I got hand-me-down uniforms, endless bus rides to school, and every summer I had to work to buy my own school supplies. During high school, my sense of belonging faded even more. My birthdays were often marked by a small cake hastily bought at the supermarket and some half-hearted wishes, while Olivia's birthday was a week-long event. Balloons, invitations, and every present she barely hinted at had already been pre-ordered by my parents. When I became valedictorian, my mother only said, "That's good, but remember not to put too much pressure on Olivia, she's still young." That kind of difference was like a thin cut. No blood, but it hurt constantly. I realized early on that if I didn't take care of myself, no one would. When I went to college, I had to juggle all kinds of part-time jobs: barista, library assistant, even tutoring middle schoolers in math and English. There was a time I asked my mom if she could help pay a portion of my tuition, but she replied, "We have more important things. Olivia needs her music lessons, her ballet, and we need to save up for her field trips." Every penny I earned through my own sweat was weighed against my sister's needs, and I was never the one who mattered more. My father was a quiet man, coming home from work to read the newspaper, rarely asking about my studies or my life. Olivia's achievements in art competitions or dance performances were always his pride and joy to boast about with friends, while I was just the older one who knows how to look after herself. I don't blame him. It just made the loneliness in my heart thicker and harder to bear. Once, I saw pictures of my whole family at the beach for a summer holiday, without me, because I was working a night shift at a cafe to save for the next semester. The feeling of being left behind just kept growing inside me. Back in high school, I once had a little dog named Milo, but after just a few months, my parents said no one had time to take care of him, so they sent him away to stay with a family friend. That was the first time I cried quietly in my room and promised myself I would never let my emotions depend on anyone else again. But making that promise was one thing. Keeping it was another, especially when, no matter how distant things got, I still hoped that one day my parents would finally see me. That hope was what carried me through all the exhaustion and pain year after year. I believed that, as long as I could make it to graduation day, every distance would be bridged by a proud smile from my mother, a hug from my father, or a family photo together. That was the simplest dream I ever had, and it was also the only thing that kept me holding on to this family, even after my heart had been broken so many times. I always thought that if I just tried hard enough, one day my family would look at me with pride in their eyes. That feeling stayed with me through college. Every time I got a good grade, I would screenshot it and send it to the family group chat, hoping for some encouragement, a heart emoji, or at least a simple question from my mom. But the responses were always the same: "Good job. Don't forget to come to Olivia's birthday next month." That sadness eventually became my motivation to pour everything I had into my studies, work, and independence, so I could be proud of myself, even if nobody else ever noticed. By senior year, my college diploma felt like a lighthouse in the middle of the night. I knew that if it weren't for scholarships and the money I scraped together from countless work shifts, I never would have made it this far. The late nights at the cafe stretched until almost dawn. Sometimes, I'd clean tables while cramming microeconomics definitions in my head, my hands smelling of coffee but my mind focused on memorizing every concept. When my shift ended, I'd rush back to my dorm, quietly wash up, and go right back to studying, always reminding myself that all these sacrifices were just for a single moment of recognition. I started planning my graduation months in advance, taking care of every tiny detail myself. When the school finally announced the date, I emailed my parents and Olivia right away, telling them I'd be receiving my degree on stage and hoping they could come. I even mentioned that I could cover all their travel and accommodation expenses, since I'd saved up for it. After sending the invitation, I spent the whole month budgeting every expense, saving every dollar I could. Each week, I cut my spending even further, choosing instant noodles instead of cafeteria meals just so I could afford a small hotel room near campus and buy round-trip plane tickets for all three of them. That wasn't all. I even made a photo album by hand, capturing my whole journey through 4 years of college. I printed the first photos from when I'd just moved into the dorm, pictures of me working at the cafe in my brown uniform, even those late nights studying in the library until it closed. I wanted my parents and Olivia to see that, even without the family's special treatment, I still made it to the finish line on my own. I even planned a family photo shoot on campus, where the maple trees would be golden, and the June sunlight would mark a new chapter in my life. I pictured us all standing together, me in the middle, diploma in hand, and everyone smiling with pride. However, from the very first days of planning, I started to feel my family's indifference more and more clearly. My mother's replies were always vague. If I'm not busy with meetings, I'll try to make it. Olivia just brushed it off. I'm also preparing for my dance show, so let me check my schedule. I kept trying to reassure myself that they were just too busy, that as the day got closer, surely everyone would do their best to make time. Every time I checked my email, I anxiously waited for a more definitive response, but all I got was endless silence. In the final weeks before graduation, I clung to that tiny hope that all my efforts wouldn't be in vain. I sent my mom a scanned copy of the invitation, adding a careful note. I really hope the whole family can come. It's the most special day of my life. Whenever I met up with friends and heard them excitedly talk about their family dinners, I just smiled and lied, saying, "My parents are busy, but they'll definitely fly in at the last minute." I even went ahead and made a reservation at a small restaurant for dinner after the ceremony, picking all the dishes our family used to love, even though I was still afraid of the scene where I'd be sitting alone at a long table, waiting. Maybe what I wanted most wasn't some big party or expensive gift, but just the presence of my family at that pivotal moment. I wanted to see my mother's eyes shining with pride, to hear my father say he was proud I'd made it all the way. I hoped Olivia would hug me, even just once, and say her big sister had done it. All those dreams carried me through so many lonely days, through every time I thought I couldn't go on. I still remember the happiness and excitement when I checked the school website and saw my name on the graduation list. There it was, right in the middle of hundreds of students, with the words, "Honors Student, Full Scholarship." I burst into tears right then, feeling as if every effort, every late night and extra shift had finally paid off. I took a screenshot and sent it to my mom, hoping to hear just one warm word of congratulations. But my phone stayed silent the whole day. No new messages. Instead, I kept myself busy with graduation preparations. I ordered the freshest, most beautiful flowers from a shop near campus, wrapping them myself to give to my mom and Olivia if they showed up. I scheduled a same-day photo shoot, hoping to get the first family picture of all four of us after so many years. Every detail, every expense, was carefully listed to make sure nothing was missing. In my heart, graduation was a small party to celebrate on my own, but it was still full of hope that maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't have to celebrate alone. The closer it got to the big day, the more clearly I felt the loneliness creeping in between my own enthusiasm. But I wouldn't let myself give up. I refused to collapse in the face of their indifference. I believed that if I was persistent and worked hard enough, one day all the good things would come to me. Deep down, I still clung to a fragile hope. A hope that, even if it was late, even at the very last minute, my family would show up, wrap me in a tight hug, and give me the recognition I'd longed for my whole youth. That morning, I woke up early, so nervous I could barely eat breakfast. The June sunlight streamed through my small window, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and a mixture of hope and vague anxiety. I wore the dress my mom once said looked good on me back in freshman year, tied my hair neatly the way she always liked, and clasped the silver necklace my dad had given me long ago around my neck. Every little detail was my final effort to make today as perfect as possible. Deep down, I still clung to the thought, maybe they'll show up at the last minute. Maybe they'll hug me, tight like in the movies I've watched. Stood among the bustling crowd on campus, friends calling out for their loved ones, parents beaming with camcorders in hand, sisters exchanging fresh bouquets and tearful hugs. The air was thick with happiness, pride, and the hope of being seen. I tried to look around, searching for familiar faces in the crowd. Maybe they'd be late, maybe they'd just arrived and were looking for their seats. I kept telling myself that even though a part of me knew I was only lying to myself. When the loudspeaker came on, each student was called up on stage to receive their diploma. Every time a friend passed by me, I heard cheers and shouts from the stands. Some of my friends got tight hugs, bursts of applause, and happy family photos. Then came my turn. Emily Harper echoed across the auditorium. I walked up onto the stage, hands trembling with emotion, eyes darting quickly over to the seats I had reserved, bought tickets for, and so carefully arranged for the 3 people I loved most. But all I saw was a row of empty chairs, a silent gap. No one waving, no familiar eyes encouraging me. I took my diploma, forcing myself to smile like someone who had just achieved something great, but inside I felt like a supporting character in my own story. After the ceremony, everyone gathered in little groups to take photos, celebrate, and head off to private parties. I stood on the sidelines, the bouquet meant for my mom and Olivia still tucked away in my bag. I checked my phone, hoping for an apologetic message, some notice that they were on their way or had run into trouble. Instead, all I received was a curt text from my mom. No explanation, no hint of regret, just the same cold words I always got when I needed encouragement. I read it over and over, an indescribable emptiness welling up inside me. I tried calling Olivia, but the phone rang and rang with no answer, finally switching over to her voicemail with the background music she loved. I forced myself to smile when a friend ran over and pulled me into a group photo, but the loneliness crept in through every single moment. Friends asked where my parents were, why I was alone on such a special day. I tried to lie, offering a gentle smile. My parents' flight got delayed. They'll be here for dinner. That answer felt like my last shield hiding the hurt inside. Everyone offered encouragement, said I was strong, but no one understood the feeling of realizing that the people closest to you are the ones who never really see you at all. Back in my room, I couldn't bring myself to take off my graduation gown yet, as if I could hold on to some shred of that special feeling before it disappeared completely. I picked up my phone and scrolled through social media out of habit. After just a few minutes, I froze as I saw the latest photos on my mother's Facebook page, my family glowing on a Hawaiian beach, golden sunlight, ocean waves, and endless happy smiles. Olivia stood in the center, hair in a high bun, white dress fluttering in the wind, hugged tightly by both of my parents. Family enjoying a wonderful vacation with our precious little girl. Love you more than anything. I stared at those photos, desperately searching for any mention of me, even a single line of congratulations from afar. But there was absolutely nothing. In that picture, perfect moment, I was completely erased. The pain turned into humiliation, then into doubt. Was I not good enough? Was I a burden or just someone extra? That night I sat alone for hours in the dark, the bouquet still intact, the photo album no one had looked at lying quietly on my desk. The tears wouldn't stop, mourning a youth full of effort that no one acknowledged, mourning the last bit of faith in my family as it shattered with every picture they posted. Even the congratulatory messages from friends made me feel even more out of place in this world. All those years of hard work, and all I got in return was a short, blunt message. A Facebook post that didn't even mention I existed. For the first time, I truly realized how invisible I was to my family, that no matter how hard I tried, I was just a faint shadow on the edge of their story. In that moment, I felt like I was standing outside a window looking in, wishing for once to be at the center of that happiness. But in reality, I was just a nameless passerby. That whole night, I sat alone in my little room, still wearing my graduation outfit, tears streaming down my face, the bouquet I bought with my own hard-earned cash wilting in the dark. Out there, my family laughed together, while I lived through the biggest day of my life in absolute solitude. Maybe, for the first time in my life, I truly understood what it felt like to be excluded, to be left behind, by the very people who were supposed to love me most, without even a single word of explanation or promise. After that lonely graduation night, I woke up the next morning with swollen eyes, exhaustion pressing on my chest like a weight I couldn't shake off. Soft sunlight slipped through the curtains, shining on my cramped room with its wilting bouquets and the photo album no one had bothered to look at. I scrolled through my phone, still finding no messages of concern or explanation from my mom, dad, or Olivia. Everything seemed meaningless. 3 days after graduation, when the pain had begun to harden into a cold scar, my mom called me. I thought about not picking up, but part of me still hoped for an apology, or at least a hint of real care. On the other end, my mother's voice sounded light, not the least bit apologetic. I just got home. The Hawaii trip was amazing. Olivia got some gorgeous photos. Oh, I heard you graduated, right? Congratulations. But you have to understand the whole family was so exhausted and needed to relax after a long time. Plus, Olivia had to prepare for her show, so she couldn't miss it. Those words hit me like a bucket of ice water, dousing the last flicker of hope inside me. I tried to hold back, asking, wasn't my graduation important enough for everyone to make time for me? Mom hesitated, then pressed on. You're grown up now. Be independent. Don't let little things affect your feelings. I know you're strong. Olivia is at a sensitive stage right now. The family can't please everyone at once. I wanted to argue, wanted to scream that I was just a daughter who wanted to be loved too, but my throat closed up. Her words felt like the final cut to my already shredded pride. That night, I posted a vague status on Facebook about disappointment, not naming anyone, just a few short lines to let go of what little emotion I had left. Less than an hour later, my phone lit up with messages from my mom and dad. Delete that right now. Don't embarrass the family. Nobody out there needs to know our private business. Olivia also sent me a voice message, her tone cold. You're being so dramatic. It's just a graduation. Not everyone needs their whole family there clapping for them. I had a show, and you didn't see me complaining. I sat on my bed, hands shaking as I played my sister's message again. My whole childhood had been about giving in, about enduring so Olivia could be the priority so she could grow up in a world painted pink. I remembered all the days we studied together, was always the one explaining things to her, always the one waiting outside the dance studio until she finished practice so we could go home together. But in return, when I needed the smallest show of support from my sister on the most important day of my life, all I got were cold words of blame. The pain reached its peak when I looked back at my graduation photos. In them, I was forcing a smile, eyes red and swollen, holding the bouquet I bought with my own savings. Everyone around me was surrounded by family, while all my effort was reduced to a single, lonely picture. Scrolling through social media again, I saw even more new photos from my family. My mom, dad, and Olivia cutting a cake on the beach in Hawaii. The caption reading, "Celebrating Olivia's city dance competition win. So proud of our golden girl." The post was flooded with comments congratulating them, praising the happiness and closeness of my family. I read each line feeling as if I had never existed at all. That evening, I received a long message from my mom, reminding me that, you're grown up now. You need to learn to be independent, to understand your parents' and your sister's choices. Don't bring this up again. Just focus on your own future. I sat there stunned, any hope of an apology or recognition dissolving instantly. I remembered all those years I had tried so hard for my family, all the times I gave way, the long hours at part-time jobs just so I wouldn't trouble anyone, and suddenly, it all felt meaningless. A part of me died when my mother told me I should keep all my feelings to myself so I wouldn't embarrass the family. I realized that all these years, I'd only been the backdrop for Olivia to shine, the one who served everyone else's happiness, never once standing at the center of love. Looking at myself in the mirror, I wondered if I would ever be important enough to be chosen. This betrayal wasn't loud or explosive like in the movies. It was a cold silence, the way my whole family simply chose to ignore me and expected me to accept their absence as something natural. The breaking point of all the disappointment, hurt, and anger was the moment I quietly turned off my phone, deleted every last family photo from my device, and slammed shut every door I once dreamed would open for me. For the first time, I seriously thought about disappearing from their lives, cutting all ties so I'd never have to wait, never have to hurt like this again. In that moment, I realized it was time to leave, not to punish anyone, but to save myself. In the days that followed, I felt like I was falling endlessly into a void where every feeling was tangled between pain, disappointment, and a cold emptiness. Seattle drifted into gloomy summer rain, each drop on the window echoing my own silent, bleeding heart. I avoided friends, using job applications as an excuse to lock myself in my little room, the only place where I could be weak without fear of being seen. The diploma hanging over my desk no longer brought pride, only served as a sad reminder of all the effort that would never be recognized. I was sleepless every night. I would lie still in bed, my mind spinning with unanswerable questions. If only I'd been born into a different family. If only, just once, my parents had put me above their other choices. I would never understand why the people I loved most could so easily forget me, could so easily overlook the most important day of their eldest daughter's life. I kept checking my phone, only to quickly turn it off again as if I was afraid of receiving yet another cold message. I began cutting all contact, blocking each of their social media accounts, turning off family group notifications, and clearing out anything connected to them from my life. But the pain didn't fade. Instead, it gnawed at me even more fiercely. I kept recalling the years gone by, from the days when I had to teach myself, cook my own meals, and do my own laundry. Every summer I worked at a cafe, my paychecks barely enough for tuition and books, while Olivia had entire summers in Europe and got a new bicycle from our parents. I remembered coming home late from work, quietly eating instant noodles under the yellow glow of my desk lamp while Olivia's smiling face looked down at me from the wall, the caption underneath reading, "So proud of our little girl." I wondered if all my sacrifices, all my efforts over the years had meant nothing. I once overheard my dad telling relatives, "Emily's grown. She doesn't need anyone, she's so independent." He was proud of that, never realizing those words only pushed me farther away, made me long all the more to be someone who needs to be loved, even just once. The peak of loneliness came in those sleepless nights, my mind racing. If even the people who brought me into this world don't see my worth, then who am I living for? I always thought I was strong, but everyone has a limit, and I had finally reached mine. I realized that for years I had lived just to one day make my parents and Olivia proud of me, a naive, burning desire so powerful that I nearly lost myself. When did I let my feelings become chained to someone else's approval, to the point that even a single, indifferent message could bring me to my knees? Some days, I would unlock my phone, read through old messages and photos, then delete them, like a ritual to free myself from the path. I unfollowed my whole family on Facebook, blocked every old phone number. My parents sent a few more messages, mostly reminders, instructions, or casual questions, but never a single apology. I didn't reply. Olivia stayed completely silent. Sometimes, I'd see her name pop up on my social media homepage, radiant in new performances, showered in congratulations, as if there had never been a sister named Emily at all. My friends gradually began to notice that I was different. A few reached out to check in, but I made excuses about being busy and avoided them. I skipped all the graduation farewell parties and group get-togethers. I didn't want anyone to see my weakness, didn't want anyone's pity. I locked myself inside my own shell, a perfectly safe place where my sadness could sink in unnoticed by anyone. Each morning I felt life slipping by without meaning. I did everything like a machine. No emotion, no purpose. Sometimes I questioned whether I even deserved happiness. I thought about my childhood, all those times I clung to my mother just hoping for a hug, a simple question. The moments in high school when I wanted to show off my achievements but got nothing but a distracted glance. The lonely nights in college, missing home but too afraid to call for fear of being a bother. Now it was all just memories, fading like the winter fog in Seattle. One rainy afternoon as the city shimmered silver, I walked through my old neighborhood, the place I once called home. I stood for a long time under the awning of a familiar cafe, watching strangers pass by and feeling utterly disconnected from the world. I realized that if I didn't let go, I would always be trapped by the past, forever just a shadow on the outskirts of someone else's happiness. That sharp pain, for the first time, gave me a strange sense of relief. No matter how much it hurt, I didn't have to force myself to live up to anyone's expectations anymore. I no longer had to endure the endless cycle of waiting, hoping, and being disappointed. That freedom was both a bitter medicine and the first step toward real relief that I gave myself. I sat in my tiny room, watching the yellow light spill across the old wooden floor, realizing that everything around me now belonged to me alone, no longer connected to anyone else. It was the darkest time in my life, but also the first moment I truly felt, only I could save myself. I slowly learned to accept the truth, to allow myself to be vulnerable, to forgive myself for ever hoping too much. From that day on, I knew that, no matter what happened in the future, I would never again be the shadow standing behind my family. Never again the person waiting to be loved. Time passed heavily, but it was enough for me to understand one thing. If I kept burying myself in old wounds, I would never really live. One evening in mid-July, when Seattle unexpectedly broke out in sunlight after days of rain, I got a message from Jenna, my best friend since high school, the only one who hadn't given up on me, even though I had ignored her encouragement so many times. "Are you free tonight? Please don't say no again. I have somewhere special I want to take you." Jenna didn't wait for me to refuse. She just sent the address and meeting time as if she already knew I needed someone to pull me out of my lonely shell. I almost wanted to come up with an excuse to avoid going, but when I saw Jenna's smiling face and her profile picture, I thought, I'll try one more time, maybe something will change. I put on the simplest clothes, tied my hair back, grabbed a light jacket and stepped outside. That summer evening, the city was strangely radiant, making me feel small in the crowd. I arrived at the place Jenna had picked, a small community center on a corner in Fremont, its warm yellow lights spilling through the windows. Jenna was already there, waving and pulling me into a tight hug, as if she wanted to give back a bit of the strength I'd lost for so long. Inside, Jenna introduced me to a group of young people whose eyes alone showed they had been through loss, pain, and struggles of their own. No one asked why I was there. No one looked at me with pity or curiosity. They just smiled, welcoming me as if I'd always been a part of their group. Jenna pulled me closer. "This is the regular meeting of Community Light, the nonprofit where I volunteer. Everyone here once thought they'd been abandoned by their family, but then realized, as long as you believe in your own worth, there are people out there willing to walk with you, even if you're not related by blood." I looked around and saw a girl with bright red hair sharing her journey of overcoming a violent childhood. A young college student talking about the pain of being rejected by his own parents for not living up to their expectations. These stories flowed on, never embellished or dramatized, just truth spoken to be heard. When it was my turn, Jenna gently placed her hand on my shoulder, giving me reassurance. I talked about my graduation day, about feeling lost in a sea of happiness, about years of unseen effort, about a family that always put Olivia first while I had to be independent and learn to care for myself. I didn't cry. I spoke with a strange calm, as if all those wounds had lost their sharp edge. The group went silent, and then one young woman smiled gently. "I know that feeling. But you made it this far. You stood up on your own. Even when no one was pulling you up, you should be proud of yourself." For the first time in months, I didn't feel like an outsider. I was listened to, accepted, with no need to be perfect or to please anyone. Jenna looked at me, her eyes shining. "Emily, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You've already done it all by yourself. No one has the right to define your worth but you." Those words, so simple, felt like the first rays of light cutting through my darkness. That night, I went home feeling lighter, as if the burden I'd carried for years had been lifted by the quiet recognition of strangers. In the days that followed, I came back to Community Light again and again. I joined volunteer activities, helping other young people with stories like mine, and realized, when I stopped chasing recognition from my family, I could finally open up to the world outside. I began to see that my value lay in my perseverance, my kindness, and my ability to empathize, not in anyone else's approval. Jenna helped me write an application for a part-time position at the organization itself, and when I got the acceptance letter, I cried, not out of sadness, but because, for the first time in my life, I truly felt I deserved to be happy. One evening I sat alone in my room, looking through old photos, not to torture myself but to truly see the journey I had made. I realized that for so many years, I had lived with a name tied to pain, injustice, and expectations that never got fulfilled. I thought long and hard, then decided to write a letter to myself, a person who is free, strong, and no longer living in the shadow of the past. I researched the legal process for changing my name, prepared the documents, and scheduled an appointment at the city registrar's office. No one knew, except for me and Jenna, the friend who had witnessed every step of my rebirth, the one who held my hand as I signed the papers like a ritual of starting over. At that very moment, I felt as if I could breathe for the first time. I was no longer Emily Harper, the child left behind, overlooked, forgotten, but Emily Rose, someone who chose her own path and her own identity. It wasn't just a new name, but a new beginning. I promised myself, I would never again seek validation from anyone, least of all those who once ignored me and acted like my presence was nothing more than a blurry background, and I understood. True healing only begins when you stop waiting for someone else to save you and instead stand up, choose to love yourself, and move forward with a heart no longer afraid. The day I officially became Emily Rose, it was drizzling in Seattle, a cold breeze slipping through the window of my small new apartment near the community light office. The name change certificate trembled in my hands, but I felt an inexplicable peace. I was no longer Emily Harper. From that moment, everything old and painful was left behind. The only thing I owed myself was to face my family, not to demand recognition, but to return to them everything they had once ignored. My value, my voice, my boundaries. I posted a short announcement on Facebook, the place where, for years, I was just a shadow in family photos with Olivia always at the center. I have chosen a new name. From today, I am Emily Rose. If anyone remembers the girl standing on the sidelines on graduation day, know that she no longer needs the presence of anyone who doesn't cherish her. My mother's message arrived almost instantly. Emily, what's going on? What are you doing? Then came a stream of missed calls from my dad, from Olivia, even from relatives who hadn't reached out in years. Called, her voice both worried and upset. What do you think you're doing? Changing your name? Cutting off contact with the whole family? Do you know what people will say? Sat up straight, keeping my voice calm. I'm doing what I should have done long ago, Mom. I'm not Emily Harper anymore. The kid who was always independent, always left behind. I grew up and got through everything with no one in the family ever asking, no one caring about the most important day of my life. I don't blame anyone, but I won't let myself be treated like a shadow ever again. Dad jumped in, his voice heavy. Everyone makes mistakes. You're our daughter. Why are you being so extreme? Everybody gets busy sometimes. You need to understand the pressures adults face. I just smiled, feeling lighter than I ever had, as if all my old resentment had finally melted away. I've been understanding all of you my whole childhood, my whole youth. For the first time, I'm choosing to understand myself. From now on, I'm living for me. I want everyone to respect this decision, whether you agree with it or not. Olivia texted me, short and blunt. You're being dramatic. Changing your name doesn't change what family means. For the first time, I didn't get angry. I wasn't hurt. I answered honestly. I don't need you or anyone else to define who I am. I choose to be myself, with everything I've endured and everything I'm going to do in the future. Olivia never replied again. In the days that followed, Mom called more often, at first to scold me, then to plead, and finally to offer half-hearted apologies. Sometimes she brought up the years of raising me, the times I was sick, the little expenses she'd covered when I was small. But I was no longer the child who needed that recognition, I reminded her. Mom, thank you for everything you did, but the success and worth I have today are things I built for myself. You can't take credit for that, because you never went through the hard times with me. If you really care, please respect my boundaries. I chose a new name to start a new life. Please let me go. There was one time I saw Mom post an old photo of me with a caption, "So proud of my eldest daughter, successful thanks to being raised in a loving family." That was the last straw. I picked up the phone and called her. This time I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. Mom, please delete that post. My success isn't thanks to your recognition or our family. It's because of everything I had to overcome on my own. I don't want you taking credit for that. If you care about me, let Emily Rose write her own story without anyone else trying to paint it for her. I blocked Mom on social media. I blocked every family phone number. For the first time in my life, I truly felt at ease. Like I'd finally removed the weight that had crushed me for so long. Peace didn't come all at once, but day by day, I learned how to enjoy it. Each breath, each step, became my own choice. At Community Light, I spent even more time working with young people who'd been hurt like I had. I shared my story, about changing my name, about boundaries, about the pain of realizing your true value doesn't depend on anyone's approval but your own. Whenever a young person would shyly ask, "Do you regret leaving your family?" I'd just smiled. I only regret not doing it sooner, not to take revenge on anyone but to finally live true to myself. Sometimes, leaving is the only way to save yourself from the darkness of neglect and invisibility. I gradually came to understand that family isn't just about blood. True family is a place where people respect and accept each other, where no one has to sacrifice their own worth just to be seen. For me, Life truly began the day I chose the name Emily Rose, a name that no one could force on me and no one could ever take away. Every day, I remind myself, I deserve happiness, love, and a place in this world not because someone handed it to me, but because I claimed it for myself. That was the moment I knew I was no longer a victim. I was the one choosing, the one setting boundaries and defending my own value. No matter who agreed, no matter how cold the past had been, Emily Harper was gone, and Emily Rose would never back down. I started keeping a journal again. This time the blank pages weren't filled with tears, but with gratitude and hope. I was grateful for the years of independence that taught me not to rely on anyone, grateful for myself for daring to stand up even when everything seemed hopeless. Sometimes, in the quiet of my little room, I still received voicemails from my mother, awkward attempts to check in, sometimes just aimless reproaches. I wasn't angry anymore, and I didn't expect anything. I let them all stay in my inbox, faint traces of a life left behind. Occasionally, I listened to them, just to remind myself, I've truly grown up. Some days I would walk along the shore of Green Lake, watching the deep blue sky and sunlight sparkling on the water, feeling the breath of freedom fill my lungs. I knew that even though there were still scars, I had truly let go. I no longer wanted to go back seeking validation, no longer let pain dictate my future. I forgave my parents, not because they deserved it, but because I needed peace for myself. I forgave Olivia, and I forgave the little Emily Harper of the past. The girl who tried so hard just to be loved. I promised myself that no one would ever have the power to make me feel invisible again. Now I tell my story as a statement. You are not invisible. You just need to stand in the right place to shine. Your worth never depends on anyone's acknowledgement, not even those closest to you. Sometimes, to find your light, you have to step out of the shadows that held you for so long. And when you find your freedom, you'll understand you belong in this world. You deserve happiness, laughter, and a bright future that needs no one's approval. If you're watching this video, if you've ever been hurt by the people you loved most, please share your story in the comments. Here, we are a family, not by blood, not by perfect photos, but by honesty and support for one another. Thank you for being with me. This isn't the end but a new chapter, where Emily Rose lives true to herself, free, full of love, and never looking back.